I've always gone to church as much as I could. I was in 8th grade before we moved. We're a half a mile from town. Somehow or other, they let us go to children's meetings on Saturday. We didn't get to go on Sunday, but Saturday we would walk to a neighbor's house, and they would take us into town, which was quite a little journey, and we were able to go to children's meeting, and we looked forward to that every week. So we had a lot of children, they call them children's meetings. So, and then as I grew up and we moved within a half mile of town, then we could go to church, whether it was walking or driving. My mother started going. My mother did go to church quite a bit. In fact, she taught Sunday school for many years after I left home. That's why we were married in the Church of God. Although there was a Methodist church here that Bill and I attended some that first year we were married, because he liked to sing in the choir and do things like that. And in Almena, we went to the Methodist church there. And I suppose it was because of me, because I always wanted to go to church.
She was raised in a family where her dad never went to church, and my family never went to church. I could go to church in the winter time if I wanted to, but we work 7 days a week, and so that wasn't. And my parents did not believe in it anyway. My granddad was Presbyterian and my grandmother was Catholic, and when they got married, they decided they would not go to church nor their kids. That's how they worked that situation out. So I was not raised in a church. I can remember my grandmother. I can remember going over and she would have me come over and have lunch with her once in a while, and I told her that I had a friend that was going to the Church of God, and she really got upset with me, and she said, you need to be careful, and you shouldn't spend too much time with them, because when they sit down to eat, they talk to their plate, and you don't want to get into that. So that was what I had growing up, and my parents were never in a church, maybe for a funeral, but that would be it.
When we lived in Lenora, Kansas, we went to the Methodist church there, and Bill liked that. And then when we moved to Emporia, we went to the First Methodist there. Then when we moved to Lincoln, Kansas in 1956, we joined that church, First Methodist Church in Lincoln.
But
okay.
I went to the store because we didn't have we needed a washing machine and I probably didn't have a dryer, but we needed a table and chairs, and we need some of that stuff, and so I went to a furniture store. And the couple was an older couple that owned it, and I told them, I said, we make $3,300 a year, and that's it. That's all we made then, and we had college expenses, we had car expenses, and so I said, we need some things, but I don't know how we can pay for it, and so she asked me, what I did, and I said, well, I'm a teacher, and she asked me if I went to church, and I said, well, we don't have a church. Because of her, we went to church in Emporia. And so anyway, she said, well, why don't you just go through and you pick out everything that you want, that you need? And I said, well, this is what I want, but I can't, there's no way, I can't pay for it. And she said, well, I think you can. She said, can you afford $10 a month? And I had to look at that and said, well, yeah, we can come up with $10 a month. And so I got all that stuff, got all that for $10 a month. Then she asked me, do you go to church anywhere? And I said, well, we don't have one. And she said, would you come to the Methodist church, visit it? And I thought, I don't really want to do that, but I owe her this, so we went. And because I was a teacher, I had a lot of influence, automatic. Teachers did. They were way up here. And so I had a good music background. And so something happened to their choir director, and so we were going to church, and we were going every Sunday. And so I decided to sing in the choir. They'd asked me to, so I did. And then something happened to the teacher, to the music director, and so they said, Bill, you have, or actually they called me Mr. Pogue all the time, but anyway, they said, you have education and you have music background, you're the best one, you have more experience and you're more able to lead the choir than anyone else. Would you do it? And I said, well, I could do it. I could read music and everything, because I had taken solos to state and did well on them and everything, and so I had a music background. So I did. And then our pastor was kind of elderly, but he was okay, but he had a car wreck. Like it was in like 6 months after we started going to the church, he had a car wreck. And he couldn't, he was in a hospital. Matter of fact, he never did return. And they didn't have much money, and it was a Methodist church, and so they couldn't get an appointment until the next, whenever it was, that day was spring, I think. So they asked me if I would lead and be responsible for the sermons, because I had an education and no one else did. So they had what they call a district superintendent, and they said the district superintendent will work with you. So I took that on, and that's how I got started involved in the church. I know one time our family came, and Lonnie, my brother, said, because as I was giving the sermon that day, and they had in the back of the hymnal then and some other books, they had basically sermons built out. So all I had to do was read it and stand up, and it was no problem for me to do that. And I know my brother was there one time, and he says, Bill, you sure had a lot of stats. He said, I don't know where you got all those stats. Well, I was just using what I could use, on that. And so anyway, then they hired a pastor, and they became our very, very close friends. And we played bridge together and cards and a lot. And so that was my involvement. It just went from there and grew.
When we moved to Colorado, what year was that?
62.
62, yeah. 1962. We went to church at the East Methodist Church, and then the EUB Church and the Methodist Church united, and we went there till we moved up here, and then we helped start this church.
Yeah, we're
Sunrise.
charter members.
We're charter members of Sunrise.
From 62 to 65, we went at East United Methodist Church because there wasn't a Methodist church out in Security or Whitefield. And then the EUB Church united with the Methodists in 65, and so then we changed there because it was close. We wanted our kids raised in Sunday school and church and be involved. And one of them played the organ and the other one played the piano all the way through, from junior high almost up until they went to college. So they were raised. That's what we wanted to do. And then in 78, we decided to sell our home in Whitefield, and we bought this lot. And and then we had it for about, I don't know, 6 or 8 months or something like that, and then we decided that to build a house. And so as soon as we moved up here, we still drove out to Good Shepherd Church, Methodist Church, for about a year. And then we found that there was a Methodist church being started that was kind of in our area. So in '79 was when we actually started Sunrise. It actually had started in a basement. The people that aren't there now, I think there were 6 of them. But First Methodist Church loaned us a pastor. We started going, and we met in a play school that was off of Woodman.
It was a very small, preschool, and we would have to set up everything each Sunday and take it down, and then the Cider Z, of course, both of us were singing in choir by then, and we always have.
And we became really involved in that, and so we went there, and then we moved into, we started growing, and then we moved into the Cider Z restaurant, which is on North Academy, and we were there 2 or 3 years, and then we built the offices and the big room there at Sunrise, where it is now, but that's all we had. So the fellowship hall is what we called it, but that's where we had church, and we actually had 300 people there until then we started to build the sanctuary, and that grew from there. And I was always involved either in finance or SPRC, staff parish, and we both were really heavily involved in music program.
I had a few piano lessons. He had more than I did, quite a bit more. So he learned to read music, and he still now does. I think you see him in church, you'll see him with a book, because he wants to see those notes. So, especially since he doesn't hear very well now, and so he doesn't do solo work anymore because he's afraid he'll mess up a note because he isn't hearing it as well. He has a really nice voice. Mine, I just call it mediocre. I'm just a average singer, I guess. Support. I give just a support singer. I sing alto, he sings bass. But I retired in 1991. That it wasn't too long that I started volunteering in the church office, and I worked there over 10 years. I worked on Wednesday afternoons for 4 hours each Wednesday. I enjoyed that because I would answer the telephone, just everything that they needed done. Worked with John Solano quite a bit. He's been a great friend and still is a great friend. But I never knew what would come out of his mouth when he walked in through the office. He's such a jokester. He would say, in the wintertime, "Oh, I had paid my respects to Mrs. Green today. I went out." Well, I knew exactly Mrs. Green was a golf course. So he'd been out golfing, even if it was wintertime. So I enjoyed his remarks as he came through. He always calls me Miss Valeta when he comes in. And even on the telephone when he calls, he says the same thing. And then he'll make little remarks to try to flatter you, He's really a neat person.
Well, I think the purpose of being in a church and being active is that the example that you set. So of course, we mostly were cognizant of the example that we were setting for our kids. And my belief was that you don't just go to church on Sunday and then leave, and it has no meaning or any involvement for the rest of the week. So I thought, well, if I believe that, and I want our kids to know what that's like, then you need to be involved. So we both were involved in many facets of the church. I think, to me, that's the most important. You need to live that life, and you can't do that just by going to church on Sunday.
I think serving in the church is a duty of mine, and that's why I volunteered for so many years in the church office, and I love to bake and things like that, so I often take food, especially for Sunday mornings, to the church. And now they've got so they not only we don't have to take as much because they take up a little. Well, they have a little jar that you could put an offering in if you're participating in the food, which I don't do that much anymore. For the eating, I don't think but I think that's the social aspect of it. I think we need more social time between services. Right now we only have 15 minutes, and that really doesn't give you time to socialize that much before the next service starts,
Working in God's kingdom is not just a Sunday event. I think that you need to involve yourself out in the community, and that's really important to me. And I hope every night when I go to bed I can think of something that I did where perhaps someone is better off, was because of what I did. That of course isn't going to happen every day of your life, but I think that needs to be a paramount thinking of you. And so there are quite a few community service activities that I'm involved in almost on a daily basis. And I think to me that is as important as what goes on in church or going to church on Sunday. Maybe in some cases even more important, because it becomes a situation where you're not expected really to do anything more than just go to church and be there for the activities. And so I'm a real believer in community service and what you can do for other people.
I think you just have to go to church on Sunday. Somebody says, oh, you go up on the mountain and you can see Jesus there, but to me, yes, that's beautiful, but still it's not really getting yourself involved in the church. That's why I started, after I retired, I started volunteering in the church office, which I don't know, I was reading last night we were selected once to be as the silent witness in the church, and they honored us when they had their conference. And at that time, that was in 2005, I had been doing that for 11 years. And I worked about 3 or 4 more after that. But to me, I just think you need to be at church every Sunday to get that spiritual thing that you need to get you through the next week.
A healthy church to me is it's a growing church. 2, that the people, after church, through the week, whenever the opportunity is there, are very friendly and are very happy people, and you can see that on Sunday morning in a really healthy church. You see the people not just walking into a church building and going into the sanctuary, and as soon as it's gone, they're gone. Through the years, particularly at Sunrise, there has been a lot of activity after and before the service, and to me, that's almost as important as the sermon itself. Is to take a part and be a part, of everything that's going on when you can, and if you have people that really want to be involved, I think that's great. I know about 3 years ago, our church takes part in the Marian House, which is run by the Catholic Church, but they provide meals for the homeless every day. And the Sunrise picks at least one day a year and have asked volunteers to go down and prepare the food and talk with the people. The first year that we did it, we had 200 volunteers that were down there on that day. That's signs of a healthy church when you have that kind of activity. Through the years, most of the years, there has really not been a problem with getting all the people, even maybe more than you need on committees and workforces. When you have a work day, all you have to do is put that in the bulletin, and you'll have more people show up than what you really need. Those are the outward signs that I see of a church that is very, very healthy.